The Chinese often say that their country has a history of more than 5,000 years. The exact length is open to interpretation, but the earliest archaeological records are from what is called the Shang dynasty. Bronze vessels, jade articles and pottery have been discovered dating from as early as 1600 BC, around 3,600 years ago, or perhaps even earlier. Animal bones called oracle bones, which have pictographic characters written on them, have also been found. This is now considered to be the earliest form of Chinese writing. After the Shang dynasty came the Zhou dynasty, when the realm was ruled over by kings through a network of feudal states. This whole period can also be divided up into the Western Zhou and the Eastern Zhou period. The first part of the Zhou dynasty was fairly peaceful, but after 476 BC, we had what is called the Warring States period. 7 prominent states emerged, and there was huge rivalry between them. During this period, there were also a number of influential ancient Chinese thinkers, including Mencius and Confucius. Eventually, after hundreds of years of battles, the states of Qin and Chu rose above the other states, and in the end it was the state of Qin that took power and established China's first dynasty, the Qin dynasty. The Qin dynasty was ruled over by China's first emperor. He centralized the power of the state, created a system of laws, standardized units of weight and measurements across his territory, and he also standardized the writing system. They weren't quite the Chinese characters we know today, but they were related. The first emperor imposed heavy taxes and started a lot of construction projects, including the First Great Wall. He even ordered books that he didn't agree with to be burnt. The Qin dynasty was very short, and the first emperor died in 210 BC. He was buried in a vast tomb in what is now the city of Xi'an. He's famous for being buried with a huge army of 6,000 terracotta statues, the terracotta warriors, and a lot of treasure that he wanted to accompany him into the afterlife. After the Qin dynasty, a person called Liu Bang led a revolt and founded the Han dynasty. The Han dynasty established a bureaucratic system where promotion was based on merit. It was also during this period that Confucianism was adopted by the state for the first time. The Confucian classics were compiled and used to inform the state. There was a short period of chaos in the middle of the dynasty when a person called Wang Mang temporarily took over the throne. The later Han dynasty kept a lot of records. We have information about the official music bureau, sacrifices and court rituals, and new farming techniques. Much of the Han dynasty coincides with the period of the Roman Empire. The Chinese classic of history and new forms of poetry were written during the Han dynasty. Paper was made for the first time. There were new agricultural tools. The wheelbarrow was developed. There were new methods of smelting metals and new herbal medicines. The bureaucracy and the cultural system of the Han dynasty was so successful that it became a model for later dynasties. The period of Chinese history after the breakup of the Han dynasty was very violent, and to be honest, it's a bit complicated. There were a lot of changes in rule and the boundaries of states. In the north, the authority passed to a general called Cao Cao and then to his son in 220 AD. Then there was a big fight for power with 2 other kingdoms, Shu and Wu. So the battle between these 3 kingdoms is now legendary in Chinese history. The kingdom of Wei defeated the others, but then was itself defeated very quickly, and the Western Jin was founded in 265 AD. There was a peace for a short time, but it didn't last. And then there were invasions of Xiongnu barbarians. The whole of North China was covered by different barbarian states, which have become known as the 16 Kingdoms. The northern Wei was the kingdom which managed to hold the largest area for the longest time. In 317 AD, a member of the Jin imperial family established the Eastern Jin dynasty, but it was largely at the mercy of landowning families. Rule over South China, the area south of the Yangtze River, in the Middle Ages was just as messy. The period there in this time is often known as the Six Dynasties, which lasted up until about 589 AD. During this time there was a proliferation of popular religions, including Taoism, which was seen as a mystical belief system. By this time Buddhism had also spread to China, originally from India, and was adopted by many of the barbarian kingdoms in the north of China. After about 400 years of chaos, China was unified again in 581 AD under the Sui dynasty. They set up a number of government institutions that were to become adopted by later dynasties. There was also a plan to build a unified canal system across the whole empire. However, rebellions arose throughout the kingdom, the dynasty fell, and after a few years the Tang dynasty was established under the Emperor Li Yuan, who was also known as Gaozu. There were a lot of remnants of Sui and rebel armies that had to be defeated in order to consolidate the Tang Empire. The Tang dynasty ruled China for about 3 centuries and is seen as a golden age in Chinese history. It had a very strong bureaucracy and system of institutions with a national entrance exam for the civil service. Chang'an, which is now the city of Xi'an, was established as the capital. There were a number of battles against barbarians and tribes. The empire became much bigger. Trade along the Silk Road expanded. The countryside was placed entirely under imperial control, but it was leased out to the people in something called the equal field system. It was a golden age for painting, high poetry, pottery and Buddhism, and a lot of foreign cultural elements were integrated into the state. The Tang dynasty also saw a powerful woman ruler usurp the imperial throne, Empress Wu Zetian. In the middle of the Tang dynasty there was a rebellion called the Anlu Shan Rebellion, which severely weakened the central power of the state. And on the borders of the Tang state there were also barbarian tribes which formed their own dynasties. In 960 AD there was another coup, and an emperor who became known as Taizu founded the Northern Song dynasty, and he established a capital at Kaifeng. He managed to incorporate a lot of powerful generals into his empire by giving them military positions. There was once again a unification of most of the country, a strong bureaucracy and a civil service system, and the state started to emphasize Confucianism again. The Confucian classics were re-examined by a scholar called Zhu Xi, and Neo-Confucianism was born. Eventually the Jurchen tribes invaded the Song and put the capital under siege, and then the northern Song fell. The invasion didn't get as far as the south, and the southern Song was established, with its capital in Hangzhou. This was a time of great scholar officials, and fine poetry and paintings were produced. The southern Song became highly wealthy, and they expanded foreign trade. They built China's first real navy, and developed improved gunpowder weapons. The Song were able to keep the Jin dynasty at bay, but they couldn't stand an invasion by the Mongols. The Mongols defeated the Jin dynasty, and they established the Yuan dynasty in China in 1271. Kublai Khan was known as the Great Khan as well as the Emperor of China, although his grandfather Genghis Khan was put down as the founder of the dynasty in the historical records. Kublai Khan built a capital where Beijing now stands. He improved agriculture, expanded the Grand Canal from north to south, expanded trade along the Silk Road, introduced paper money, received a number of missionaries and travels from abroad, including supposedly Marco Polo. He also increased contact with the West and consolidated the Mongol Empire and consolidated China under a number of different provinces. The court was a mixture of Mongol and Chinese culture, and Buddhism, Taoism and Western religions flourished. Rivalries at court, conflicts with the native Chinese culture, etc., weakened the dynasty. Then, after a series of natural disasters, rebel movements arose and the Mongol dynasty in China fell, and a new native dynasty arose out of the struggle, the Ming dynasty in 1368. The Ming dynasty brought about a long period of stability to the country. The emperor who founded the Ming became known as the Hongwu Emperor. The dynasty accepted tribute from all over Southeast Asia and even beyond. One of the most well-known Ming dynasty emperors was Yongle. He expanded the capital in Beijing, and he built a secondary capital in Nanjing. He had the Forbidden City, the Imperial Palace, built in Beijing, and the imperial tombs built on the outskirts of the city. His most trusted eunuch, Zheng He, became an admiral, and he was sent on long diplomatic missions by sea as far as the Middle East and Africa. The Ming Dynasty established special trading offices for dealing with international trade, which expanded rapidly, and there was an influx of foreign silver into China. During this period, the Great Wall was extended, and many of the great classic Chinese novels were written during the Ming Dynasty as well. Towards the end of the Ming Dynasty, there were failed harvests, floods, and a massive disease which spread all over the country. Then the peasant rebel leader Li Zicheng took control of Beijing in an invasion from Manchuria, which is the area in the northeast of China. The Qing dynasty ruled China from 1644. China was again ruled by a foreign people, the Manchus, who were descendants from Jurchen tribes. Later, the Kangxi Emperor adopted the bureaucratic system, the civil service exam system, and the Confucianism from earlier dynasties. He expanded the borders of the empire and built up the power and confidence of the Qing state. Then, the Qing dynasty was ruled by two powerful emperors, Yongzheng and Qianlong, and they continued military campaigns to expand the empire.
It can be confused after watching this video. You might be thinking the Chinese history is so long and so complex, or you may forget it already. Understanding a 5,000 years civilization and history in 10 minutes is an impossible job. But the purpose of this video is to show you how old the Chinese civilization and history is, and how diverse the culture are. We can find that in different times, although most of the time it was ruled by Han people, ancient China was ruled by several other ethnic groups of people too. So especially during these times, a massive cultural exchange happened in this land, making the diversity culture possible. And here I like to emphasize two dynasties in Chinese history. The first one is the Qing dynasty because it is the first imperial dynasty, and the Han dynasty. The Han dynasty is considered as the first long history and powerful dynasty in Chinese history.
The Qin dynasty from 221 to 206 BC is considered China's first dynasty. Although China did have three ancient dynasties, the Xia, Shang, and Zhou, the Qin ruler was the first to declare himself an emperor. He unified all of China after centuries of division and ruled over an estimated population of 20 million people. Now, despite its glory, the Qin was a brutal and short-lived dynasty. Emperor Qin's objective was to rule all under heaven, and he did this through military campaigns and a state philosophy of legalism, or the idea that misbehavior was met with harsh punishment in order to keep the populace in line. The original state of Qin was located in the western area of what was China at the time. It was a royal domain allocated for raising horses. It then became one of the 7 warring states after the ancient Zhou dynasty split up. The young king of Qin started his assault on other states in the year 230 BC, and by 221 BC he had defeated all 6, unifying China. He then sought to solidify this unification through a unification of culture. Qin unified the currency, weights and measures, Chinese characters, and even the width of roads across the whole empire. But Emperor Qin was not popular among the people. His compulsory public works projects and heavy taxation put a heavy burden on the populace. The Qin emperor ordered the burning of all books on alternative philosophies other than the one used by the Qin government. He then buried alive 460 people who violated this rule. His heavily centralized power structure also angered the nobility, whose power was weakened. In 210 BC, the emperor died, and his successor found himself faced with revolts. In 206 BC, a group of rebels led by Lieutenant Liu Bang succeeded in toppling the Qin. Liu Bang established the Han dynasty, which would last for 4 centuries. Although it lasted only 17 years and inflicted great suffering on the populace, the Qin dynasty left behind a legacy. The first Great Wall of China was built during the Qin to protect the country from invasions from the north. After the Qin emperor died, he was buried in a massive complex of tombs. In 1974, Chinese farmers dug up some parts of a terracotta statue. This led to the discovery of 7,000 terracotta warriors that had been buried with the emperor to protect him in the afterlife. But what is more is that the Qin sowed the seeds of unification, leading to later periods of prosperity and stability during the great dynasties that followed. We'll tell you more about one of those, the Han Dynasty, next time. The Han Dynasty began in 206 BC when a man named Liu Bang, who had been born a peasant, led a group of generals to overthrow the Qin dynasty. This started a 400-year period of prosperity, sometimes referred to as China's first golden age. The capital of the dynasty was at Chang'an, and at the time it was one of the biggest cities in the world. The Han Dynasty saw massive territorial expansion, with China's area almost doubling. The Han defeated the tribes to the north and signed treaties with the clans to the west. This made travel safer and led to the establishment of what became known as the Silk Road. This was the trade route connecting China with the Roman Empire, thousands of miles away in Europe. The Han also saw massive cultural developments, with Confucianism, which had been suppressed under the Qin, rising to become the state philosophy of China's aristocracy. Officials were evaluated on their conduct according to the Confucian values, and an imperial university was established to train them. It was also during the Han period that Buddhism spread to China from India. Buddhism's emphasis on compassion and universal salvation appealed to the masses. Along with Confucianism and Taoism, Buddhism became one of China's three main religions that would dominate the faith of the Chinese people for the next 2,000 years. The Han Dynasty gave rise to some of China's most well-known historical figures, such as Sima Qian, who wrote the Record of the Grand Historian, the definitive record of China's early history, and also Han Xin, the general who helped Liu Bang establish the Han Dynasty. The Han Dynasty was briefly interrupted in the year 9 AD, when the nephew of the empress, Wang Mang, seized the throne. 14 years later, Liu Xiu, a descendant of Liu Bang, eventually toppled him, and the Han Dynasty, with 12 more emperors, continued for another 200 years. But like all dynasties in Chinese history, the Han could not last forever. It officially ended in the year 220 AD. Trouble at court and uprisings across the empire led to its eventual downfall. The warlord Dong Zhuo led troops into the capital, kick-starting the battles between various warlords. Eventually, Cao Cao managed to establish the Wei state north of the Yangtze River. Sun Quan established the Wu state to the south of the Yangtze, and Liu Bei the Shu state in the west, starting the period known as the Three Kingdoms.
Understanding the Chinese history will take you a lot of time. A 5,000 years history contains so many things. Each dynasty has its own unique features in politics, economy, and culture. Although in this course we'll only cover a little part of Chinese culture, but I encourage you to explore and read more about ancient China. Her civilization will amaze you.